A billionaire's daughter had failed every test until the single black dad janitor taught her to start at zero. And now, in a wood-paneled office that cost more than most people earn in a lifetime, that janitor was about to lose everything. The air was thick, expensive cologne mixed with fear and old money. Outside the windows, Charlotte gleamed in golden afternoon light, indifferent. Inside, a woman in a $10,000 suit was destroying a man's life. "He's been meeting alone with my daughter," Victoria Ashford said, her voice sharp as cut glass. "After hours and empty classrooms. Do you understand what that looks like?" The janitor stood near the door, silent, waiting. He was in his late 30s, tall and lean, with close-cropped hair gone gray at the temples. His uniform still smelled like industrial cleaner. His dark brown hands hung steady at his sides. No trembling, no fidgeting. Controlled. Too controlled. The headmaster shifted in his chair. A security guard stood by the door, hand near his radio. Victoria's daughter sat beside the janitor, 17 years old and shaking. She clutched a calculus exam, 96% marked in red at the top. "He didn't do anything wrong," the girl whispered. Her mother didn't even look at her. "You're meeting with the help in secret, Sloan. That's exactly what's wrong." The mathematics department chair stepped forward, Dr. Lin, mid-40s, skeptical. "Can you explain your teaching methodology, Mr. Webb?" The janitor hesitated. This was it. The moment his carefully built silence would either save him or confirm every assumption in that room. Victoria sneered. "He's a janitor. What methodology could he possibly?" "You start at zero," the janitor said quietly. He walked to the whiteboard, picked up a marker, and began to write. Not simple equations, not high school formulas, something else entirely. Dr. Lin's face went pale. She stepped closer, reading his work. Her hand went to her mouth. "My God," she whispered. "You're Marcus Webb?" The room froze. "You wrote the Webb theorem. If you believe that true brilliance has nothing to do with job titles or uniforms, stay with this story. Because what happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about who deserves respect and who gets forgotten." Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated because of what people saw instead of who you were? 6 weeks earlier, Marcus Webb was invisible. He arrived at Whitmore Academy every morning at 5:30, when Charlotte was still dark and the air smelled like rain and distant coffee from the shops on Tryon Street. The security guard at the gate waved him through without looking up. Marcus parked his dented Toyota in the staff lot, grabbed his keys, and unlocked the side entrance before anyone else arrived. The marble halls stretched before him like a museum. Polished floors, ornate moldings, portraits of dead white men in gilt frames. Marcus pushed his custodial cart down the main corridor, the wheels squeaking softly in the silence. He was tall and lean, with close-cropped hair gone silver at the temples. His dark brown skin looked tired under the fluorescent lights. His hands were stained permanent gray from years of industrial cleaner. He wore the same navy uniform every day, his name stitched in fading white thread above the breast pocket. Students began arriving around 7. They moved past him like he was furniture. A girl dropped the candy wrapper. Marcus bent down, picked it up, tossed it in his trash bag. She didn't say thank you. She didn't even look at him. A teacher walked by carrying a stack of papers. Marcus stepped aside to let her pass. She didn't acknowledge him. By 8, the building was full of voices and footsteps and locker doors slamming. Marcus emptied trash bins in the science wing. He wiped down water fountains. He mopped up a spill near the vending machines, invisible. That morning, like every morning, Marcus had woken up at 4:45 in his small duplex in the West End. The house was old but clean, with narrow rooms and creaky floors. He made breakfast while the sky turned gray outside the kitchen window. His daughter Zara sat at the table in her pajamas, tinkering with a circuit board and a pile of salvaged wires. She was 12, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's natural hair pulled into 2 puffs. She wore mismatched socks. Always. "Dad, why won't this LED light up?" she asked without looking up. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, studied the board. "Check your resistor. You need more resistance or you'll burn it out." Zara swapped the component. The light blinked on. She grinned. "How'd you know that?" she asked. "Just do," Marcus said. He set a plate of scrambled eggs in front of her. She picked up her fork, still focused on her circuit. "Dad? Yeah? Why don't you ever talk about what you did before you worked at Whitmore?" Marcus's hand tightened on the spatula. "Just slightly. Not much to talk about," he said. "But you had to do something, you know, stuff. Like, a lot of stuff. I know how to cook eggs. Eat." Zara sighed, but didn't press. She'd learned not to. Marcus glanced at the clock. 5:20. Time to go. Before he left, he opened his locker in the hallway. Inside was a framed photo he kept face down on the shelf. He didn't look at it often, but sometimes, on hard mornings, he needed the reminder. He turned it over. The photo showed a younger version of himself in black academic robes, smiling, standing beside a beautiful black woman with a bright laugh and kind eyes. Naomi. She wore a MIT hoodie and was making a silly face at the camera. Marcus stared at the photo for 3 seconds. Then he closed the locker and drove to work. Now, at Whitmore, Marcus wheeled his cart past the administrative wing. A recycling bin near the math classrooms was overflowing. He stopped to empty it. On top of the pile was a crumpled calculus test. Red ink covered the page. 42%. Failed. Marcus glanced at the door. No one was watching. He smoothed out the paper. His eyes scanned the work. The student had tried to solve an integral but made a fundamental error in the third line. Substitution done wrong. Everything after that collapsed. Marcus's lips moved silently. He saw exactly where the logic broke. Saw how to fix it. Saw the elegant path the student had missed. He folded the test, dropped it back in the bin, and kept moving. A math teacher passed him in the hallway. She was young, maybe late 20s, carrying a coffee mug that said, "I'm silently correcting your grammar." She walked past Marcus like he wasn't there. By noon, Marcus had cleaned 4 bathrooms, 2 stairwells, and the faculty lounge. He ate lunch alone in the custodial closet, turkey sandwich, water, same as always. At 3, students started leaving. The building emptied slowly. By 5, it was quiet again. Marcus mopped the main hallway one last time. The marble gleamed under the evening light coming through the tall windows. He thought about Zara. She'd be home by now, working on a robot or reading one of the physics books she checked out from the library. She asked him questions he couldn't answer without revealing too much. Questions like, "How do you know calculus? And why do you work here if you're so smart?" He didn't have good answers. Or rather, he had answers he couldn't say out loud. Marcus finished mopping, returned his cart to the supply room, and clocked out. He walked to his car through the staff lot. The security guard waved goodbye without looking up. Marcus drove home through the West End, past the church where he and Naomi used to go, past the corner store where Zara bought candy with her allowance, past the small park where they'd scattered Naomi's ashes. He pulled into his driveway just as the streetlights flickered on. Inside, Zara was at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and wires. "How was school?" Marcus asked. "Good. How was work?" "Same as always." Zara looked up at him, really looked. "You okay, Dad?" Marcus set down his keys. "Yeah, baby, I'm okay." But that night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Marcus thought about the calculus test in the recycling bin, thought about the student who'd failed, thought about how easy it would have been to show them where they went wrong. He thought about the last time he'd stood in front of a classroom and felt like he was doing what he was born to do. And he thought about the promise he'd made to himself the day Naomi died. Never again. Stay small. Stay invisible. Stay safe. It was easier that way, or so he told himself. The same day, Marcus stood in that headmaster's office, his secret exposed and his carefully built life crumbling around him, had started like every other day for the past 6 years. He'd arrived at Whitmore Academy at 5:30 in the morning, when Charlotte was still dark and quiet. The security guard at the gate waved him through without looking up. Marcus parked his dented Toyota in the staff lot, grabbed his keys, and unlocked the side entrance. The marble halls stretched before him. Polished floors gleamed under soft lights. Ornate crown molding lined the ceilings. Portraits of founders and benefactors hung in gilt frames along the walls. The air smelled like floor wax and old money. Marcus pushed his custodial cart down the main corridor. The wheels squeaked softly. His footsteps echoed in the emptiness. He was tall and lean, with deep brown skin that looked tired under the fluorescent lights. His close-cropped hair had gone silver at the temples. His hands were permanently stained gray from years of industrial cleaner. He wore the same Navy uniform every day, his name stitched in fading white thread above the breast pocket. Students began arriving around 7. They flowed past him in waves. A girl in a field hockey uniform dropped the granola bar wrapper. Marcus bent down, picked it up, dropped it in his trash bag. She kept walking, didn't even glance back. 2 boys laughed loudly near the lockers, shoving each other. Marcus stepped aside to let them pass. They didn't acknowledge him. A teacher hurried by with a stack of papers threatening to spill. Marcus shifted his cart to give her space. She didn't say thank you. Invisible. That morning, like every morning, Marcus had woken up at 4:45 in his small duplex in the West End. The neighborhood was quiet and worn, with narrow streets and houses that had been there since before he was born. His place was old but clean. Creaky floors, thin walls. Enough. He made breakfast while the sky turned from black to gray outside the kitchen window. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice from concentrate. His daughter Zara sat at the table in her pajamas, surrounded by circuit boards and salvaged wires. She was 12, with her father's dark eyes and her late mother's natural hair pulled into 2 puffs. She wore mismatched socks, one striped, one polka-dotted. "Dad, this resistor keeps burning out," she said without looking up. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, studied the board. Saw the problem immediately. "You need more resistance," he said, "or you'll fry the LED." Zara swapped the component. The light blinked on. She grinned. "How'd you know that?" Marcus set a plate of eggs in front of her. "Just do." She picked up her fork, but didn't eat yet. Her eyes followed him as he moved to the sink. "Dad?" "Yeah, baby? Why don't you ever talk about what you did before Whitmore?" Marcus's grip tightened on the spatula. "Just for a second. Not much to talk about. But you know stuff. Like, a lot of stuff. You held me with calculus and physics, and you know how circuits work, and you can fix anything. That's just life stuff. But where'd you learn it?" Marcus turned to face her, forced a smile. "Eat your eggs before they get cold." Zara sighed. She'd learned when to push and when to let go. This was a letting go moment. Marcus glanced at the clock. 5:20. Time to leave. Now, at Whitmore, Marcus emptied trash bins in the administrative wing. The recycling bin near the math classrooms was overflowing. He stopped to sort through it. On top of the pile was a crumpled calculus test. Red ink covered the page like wounds. 42% circled at the top. Failed. Marcus glanced down the hallway. Empty. He smoothed out the paper. His eyes moved across the work. The student had attempted an integral but made a fundamental error in the substitution. Everything after that line was wrong, built on a broken foundation. Marcus's lips moved silently. He saw exactly where the logic broke down, saw the elegant path the student had missed, saw how simple it would have been to fix if someone had just shown them how to think about it differently. He folded the test, dropped it back in the bin, kept moving. A math teacher passed him in the hallway. She was young, mid-20s, carrying a travel mug that said, "I survived another meeting that should have been an email." She walked past Marcus like he was part of the architecture. By noon, Marcus had cleaned 4 bathrooms, 2 stairwells, and the faculty lounge. He ate lunch alone in the custodial closet. Turkey sandwich, apple dot water bottle, same as always. At 3, students started leaving. Designer backpacks, car services waiting out front, laughter echoing in the halls. By 5, the building was quiet again. Marcus mopped the main corridor one last time. The marble gleamed. Late afternoon sun poured through the tall windows, turning everything gold. He thought about the calculus test in the recycling bin, thought about how easy it would be to pull it out, find the student, show them where they went wrong. But that would mean being seen, being known, being something other than invisible. Marcus finished mopping, returned his cart to the supply room, clocked out. Before he left, he stopped at his locker in the staff area. Most of it was empty. Extra uniform, bottle of aspirin, nothing personal. Except the photo he kept on the top shelf, face down. Marcus looked at the clock. 5:45. He should go. Zara would be home soon, working on a robot or reading one of those physics books she checked out from the library. But his hand reached for the photo anyway. He turned it over. The image showed a younger version of himself in black academic regalia, smiling wide, standing beside a beautiful black woman with bright eyes and an even brighter laugh. Naomi. She wore an MIT hoodie and was making a goofy face at the camera, her tongue sticking out. Marcus stared at the photo. His throat tightened. 3 seconds. That's all he allowed himself. Then he placed the photo back on the shelf, face down, and closed the locker. He drove home through the West End, past the church where he and Naomi used to go on Sundays, past the corner store where Zara bought candy with her allowance, past the small park where they'd scattered Naomi's ashes 7 years ago. Inside his duplex, Zara was at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and wires and dreams. "How was school?" Marcus asked. "Good." "How was work?" "Same as always." Zara looked up at him. Really looked. Her eyes were too knowing for 12. "You okay, Dad?" Marcus set down his keys. "Yeah, baby. I'm okay." But that night, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, Marcus thought about that crumpled calculus test. Thought about the student who'd failed. Thought about how badly he wanted to help. And he thought about the promise he'd made to himself the day Naomi died. No more teaching. No more classrooms. No more being Dr. Marcus Webb. Just survive. Just be enough for Zara. Just stay small and safe and invisible. It was supposed to be easier this way. But 6 years in, Marcus was starting to wonder if invisible was just another word for buried alive. At 10:30 that same morning, the administrative wing of Whitmore Academy erupted. The door to Headmaster Brennan's office slammed open. Victoria Ashford strode out, her heels striking the marble floor like gunshots. She was tall and sharp-featured, dressed in a cream blazer and silk blouse that cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back tight. Her jaw was tighter. Behind her, a 17-year-old girl stumbled to keep up. Sloane Ashford had her mother's height but none of her presence. She was thin, pale, wearing the Whitmore uniform like armor that didn't fit. Her eyes were red, tears streaked her cheeks. Headmaster Brennan followed them into the hallway. He was in his mid-50s, gray-haired and tired, wearing a cardigan that had seen better decades. "Mrs. Ashford, please," he said. "If we could just discuss this rationally." Victoria spun to face him. "Rationally, I've spent $200,000 on tutors for my daughter. $200,000. And you're telling me she's failing again?" Her voice carried down the hall. Faculty members peeked out of offices. Students slowed near their lockers. "We've provided every accommodation," Brennan said carefully. "Extended time, alternative testing formats. But Sloane has to demonstrate actual comprehension of the material." "Then your teachers aren't doing their jobs." "Our teachers are excellent, some of the best in." "If they were the best," Victoria snapped, "my daughter wouldn't be failing calculus for the 3rd consecutive semester." Sloane flinched, wrapped her arms around the textbook she was holding. Brennan's voice stayed calm, professional. "Mrs. Ashford, I understand your frustration, but we can't simply pass students who haven't mastered the curriculum, not even for our most generous donors." Victoria's eyes went cold. "Generous donors? You mean the library wing I funded, the one with my family's name on it? We're very grateful for your support, but academic standards—" "Don't lecture me about standards, Headmaster. You cash my checks, you smile when I show up at fundraisers, but when my daughter needs actual help, you give me excuses." A secretary walked past, pretending not to listen. 2 juniors stood frozen near the water fountain. Brennan's jaw tightened. "Just slightly. What would you like me to do? Pass her?" Silence. "I can't do that," Brennan said quietly. "Can't? Or won't?" "Won't." Victoria stared at him. Her hand gripped her designer purse hard enough that her knuckles went white. Then she turned on her heel and started walking. "Come, Sloane." The girl followed. She always followed. They moved down the hallway toward the main entrance. Victoria's heels echoed. Sloane's footsteps were silent. Marcus was near the administrative offices, emptying a recycling bin outside the guidance counselor's suite. He heard the commotion, but kept working. Head down. Hands busy. Invisible. Victoria came around the corner fast. Marcus was pushing his custodial cart across the hallway to reach the next bin. She nearly walked straight into it. Victoria stopped short, looked down at the cart, then up at the man pushing it. Her eyes traveled from his stained hands to his worn uniform to his face. She didn't see a person. She saw an obstacle. "Watch where you're going," she said sharply. Marcus stepped back, moved the cart aside. "Sorry, ma'am." Victoria didn't acknowledge the apology. She looked him up and down with open contempt, the way someone might examine a piece of furniture that was blocking their path. "People like you are supposed to be invisible," she muttered. Marcus said nothing. Victoria raised her voice, loud enough for the students at the water fountain to hear, loud enough for the secretary in the main office, loud enough for her daughter standing right behind her. "This is exactly the problem. This school accepts mediocrity everywhere, even in the help." She gestured vaguely at Marcus. "No wonder my daughter is failing." The hallway went quiet. Marcus stood perfectly still. His dark brown hands rested on the handle of his cart. His face showed nothing. No anger, no hurt. Just patience worn smooth by years of practice. He picked up a pen someone had dropped near the recycling bin, set it on the edge of the cart for lost and found, went back to work. Victoria turned away, already moving toward the exit. But Sloane didn't move. She stood there, 5 feet from the janitor, holding her calculus textbook against her chest like a shield. She'd heard what her mother said, seen the way she looked at him, felt the casual cruelty of it settle in the air like dust. And she'd seen something else. When Victoria had mentioned her daughter's failure, when she gestured at the textbook in Sloane's arms for just a second, the janitor's eyes had flicked toward it. Not the way someone glances at an object, the way someone recognizes an old friend. His gaze had lingered on the cover. on the title. Introduction to Calculus, 3rd edition. And something had shifted in his expression. Something small, a tightening at the corners of his eyes. A change in the way he breathed. Like he'd seen something that hurt, or something he missed. Then it was gone. His face went blank again. He returned to his cart. "Sloan." Victoria's voice cut through the moment. "Now." The girl turned and followed her mother. But at the door, she looked back. The janitor was emptying the recycling bin, sorting paper from plastic with the same careful attention someone might give to a delicate equation. His movements were precise, methodical, too precise for someone who was just emptying trash. Victoria pushed through the glass doors into the sunlight. Sloan followed, but her mind stayed in that hallway. Something about him felt different. She didn't know what, didn't know why. But she knew that when her mother had called him mediocre, something in his silence had felt less like weakness and more like restraint, like he was choosing not to speak, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had too much. Over the next week, Sloan Ashford failed her 5th consecutive calculus exam. She got the test back on a Wednesday morning. The teacher handed it to her face down, which meant bad news. Sloan turned it over in her lap, hiding it from the students around her. 38%. Red ink covered the page like blood.x marks everywhere. "See me after class," written at the top in sharp letters. Sloan folded the test in half, then in half again. She shoved it into her bag and stared at her desk for the rest of the period. When the bell rang, she left through the side door before the teacher could stop her. She walked through Whitmore's halls in a fog. Students laughed around her. Locker doors slammed. Someone called her name, but she didn't turn around. She'd failed again. 5 tests. 5 failures. 3 semesters of the same class, and she still couldn't understand it. Couldn't make the numbers make sense. Couldn't see what everyone else seemed to see so easily. Her mother's voice played on repeat in her head. Mediocrity everywhere. No wonder my daughter is failing. Maybe she was right. Maybe Sloan really was broken. She turned a corner near the science wing and almost ran into the janitor. Marcus was cleaning a display case near the physics classrooms. He had a spray bottle in one hand and a rag in the other. He stepped aside to let her pass. "Sorry," he said quietly. Sloan nodded and kept walking. But something made her look back. The janitor had stopped cleaning. He was standing in front of a poster on the wall, a diagram showing polynomial functions, graphs and equations arranged in neat rows. His fingers reached out, touched the paper, traced one of the curves like he was reading Braille. His lips moved, just slightly, like he was talking to himself or solving something. Then he seemed to remember where he was. He pulled his hand back, picked up his spray bottle, and returned to the display case. Sloan stood there for 5 seconds. Then she turned and walked away. That afternoon, she stayed late in the library. She couldn't go home. Couldn't face her mother's questions about how school went. Couldn't sit through another lecture about effort and excellence and the Ashford family reputation. So she sat at a table in the back corner, staring at her failed test, trying to figure out where she'd gone wrong. The library was quiet. A few students worked at other tables. The librarian shelved books near the entrance. Through the window, Sloan saw the janitor pushing his cart down the hallway. He stopped at a trash can near the math classrooms, started sorting through the contents. He pulled out a piece of paper, unfolded it, studied it. Sloan leaned closer to the window. It was homework, someone's calculus assignment. The janitor held it up to the light, his eyes moving across the page, reading the problems, following the student's work. He stood there for almost a minute. Then he folded the paper, dropped it back in the trash, and kept moving. Why would a janitor care about someone's calculus homework? The next day, Sloan started watching him. Not obviously. Not in a way anyone would notice. But she became aware of him in a way she hadn't been before. She saw him in the hallways between classes, saw him emptying bins during lunch, saw him mopping floors after school while she sat in the library pretending to study. And she saw things that didn't add up. The way he paused near the math wing. The way his eyes lingered on student work in the recycling bins. The way he moved through the building like he was seeing something no one else could see. On Friday evening, Sloan stayed late again. Most students had gone home. The building was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of a vacuum cleaner. She packed up her things slowly, walked toward the exit, past an empty classroom with the door half open. Movement inside caught her eye. She stopped, looked through the window. The janitor was there, alone. He'd set his cleaning supplies by the door. He was standing at the teacher's desk, holding something small, a work order maybe, or a scrap of paper. He picked up a pencil, and he started writing. Sloane stepped closer to the window, pressed her face near the glass. The janitor wasn't writing words. He was writing equations. His hand moved across the paper in smooth, confident strokes. Building something, solving something. He worked for maybe 2 minutes, never hesitated, never erased. Just wrote like he was copying something he could see in his mind. When he finished, he set down the pencil, stared at what he'd written. His expression was hard to read, sad maybe, or tired. Then he crumpled the paper into a ball and tossed it toward the trash can. He missed. The paper hit the edge of the can and bounced onto the floor. The janitor didn't pick it up. He grabbed his supplies and left through the back door. Sloane waited until his footsteps faded. Then she pushed open the classroom door and walked inside. The crumpled paper sat on the floor near the trash can. She picked it up, smoothed it out on a desk. Her breath caught. It was a proof. A complete mathematical proof written in small, precise handwriting. She didn't understand most of it. The symbols were too advanced, the logic too complex, but she understood enough to know it wasn't high school math. This was college level, maybe beyond, and it was perfect. Every line connected to the next. Every step followed logically, the kind of elegant work her tutors talked about but never showed her. Whoever wrote this didn't just understand math. They saw it, felt it, lived it. Sloane sat down at the desk, spread the paper in front of her, read through it again, even though most of it was beyond her. Her expensive tutors had credentials from Harvard and Princeton. They'd shown her formulas and techniques and test-taking strategies. But none of them had ever written anything like this. None of them understood math the way this person did. The janitor. The man her mother had called mediocre. The man everyone walked past like he was invisible. Sloane folded the paper carefully, put it in her bag, turned off the classroom lights and left. That night, she sat in her bedroom with the proof on her desk and her failed test beside it. 2 pieces of paper. 2 completely different worlds. One showed her failure. The other showed mastery. And the person who'd written the proof was emptying trash cans at her school. It didn't make sense, unless he was hiding something, unless there was more to him than anyone knew. Sloane stared at the proof until her eyes hurt. Then she made a decision. The kind of decision that would have been unthinkable a week ago. Tomorrow, she was going to do something. A girl in her position never did. She was going to ask the janitor for help. The next evening, Sloane found Marcus in a second-floor classroom. It was 6:15. The building was mostly empty. Late sunlight slanted through the windows, turning the dust particles gold. Marcus was wiping down desks with a rag. His cart sat by the door, supplies organized with the same precision he brought to everything. He looked up when she walked in. His dark brown hands paused mid-wipe. "Can I help you?" he asked quietly. Sloane stood in the doorway. Her bag hung heavy on her shoulder. Inside was the crumpled proof she'd found in the trash, and her most recent failed test, and a notebook she'd bought but didn't know how to fill. "I need to ask you something," she said. Marcus set down his rag, straightened, waited. Sloane's hands were shaking. She gripped her bag strap tighter. "I found this last week in the classroom down the hall." She pulled out the crumpled paper, smoothed it on a desk between them. Marcus looked at it, his jaw tightened. Just for a second. "You shouldn't take things from the trash," he said. "You wrote this. That's garbage." "No," Sloane said. "It's not." She took a breath, forced herself to keep talking. "I've had 4 tutors. All of them went to Harvard or Princeton or MIT. They've shown me 1,000 formulas, but none of them have ever written anything like this." Marcus picked up his rag again. "I need to finish cleaning." "Please." The word came out broken. "Can you teach me?" "No. I'll pay you. My mother has money. I can." I said no. Sloane's throat went tight. She blinked hard, tried to keep her voice steady. "I think I'm just too stupid for math." Marcus stopped moving. The classroom went quiet. Outside, a car alarm went off in the parking lot, distant, muffled. Marcus set down the rag very carefully. He turned to face her, really looked at her for the first time since she'd walked in. "You're not stupid," he said. "I failed 5 tests in a row. That doesn't mean you're stupid. It means no one's taught you how to think." Sloane's eyes burned. She looked down at the desk. "Everyone else understands it, just not me." "Do you have your last test?" She nodded, pulled it from her bag, handed it to him. Marcus didn't look at the grades circled in red at the top. He looked at her work. His eyes moved down the page slowly, studying each line, each attempt. "Your tutors taught you formulas," he said finally. "Isn't that what math is?" "No." He set the test on the desk. "Formulas are tools, but they never taught you to think. They never showed you why the formulas work." "I don't understand." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. She could see something shifting behind his eyes, a decision being made, or maybe a vow being broken. "One session," he said. "That's all." Hope flared in Sloane's chest. "Really? One?" She nodded quickly. "Okay, yes, thank you." Marcus walked to the whiteboard at the front of the room, picked up an eraser, wiped away the notes from whatever class had been there earlier. The board came clean, blank. He picked up a dry erase marker, black ink. Then he wrote a single number in the center of the board. "O." Sloane stared at it. We start here," Marcus said. "Not with calculus, not with derivatives or integrals, with what's true. 0, the foundation, the place where everything builds from." He drew a number line beneath the 0, marked points to the left and right. His handwriting was precise. Careful, the kind of careful that comes from years of practice. "Most people think math is about memorizing rules," he said. "But that's not what it is. Math is a language. It describes patterns, relationships, the shape of the world." Sloane sat down at a desk in the front row, pulled out her notebook. "When your tutors showed you formulas, they were teaching you words in a language you don't speak yet. You can memorize words, but if you don't understand the grammar, the structure, you can't use them." He turned back to the board, started writing, not formulas, principles. Simple truths about numbers and how they relate to each other. "We start at 0, he said. "We build one brick at a time, no shortcuts, no tricks, just understanding." For the next hour, Marcus taught. He didn't lecture. He asked questions, made her think through problems instead of handing her answers. When she got stuck, he didn't give her the solution. He backed up, found the place where her understanding broke down, built it back up from there. Slowly, something started to shift. The numbers on the board stopped looking like random symbols. They started to form patterns. Relationships she could see and feel and understand. "Why did no one explain it like this before?" she asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Different people teach different ways." "But you're good at this, really good." He didn't respond, just kept writing, building the next concept, showing her how it connected to what came before. The light outside faded from gold to gray. The parking lot emptied. The building settled into evening quiet. When Marcus finally capped the marker, the whiteboard was covered in notes, not formulas, foundations. "That's enough for today," he said. Sloane looked at her notebook, pages filled with her own handwriting, her own understanding, not someone else's shortcuts. Her work. "Can I come back tomorrow?" she asked. Marcus wiped his hands on his uniform. The gray stains from years of industrial cleaners stood out against his dark brown skin. "This was a one-time thing. Please. I actually understood what you just taught me. For the first time in 2 years, I understood." She could see him weighing it, see the conflict in the way he stood, the way his hands tightened and released. "Tomorrow, I have to. Please." The word hung in the air between them. Marcus looked at the whiteboard, at the foundations they'd built together, at the proof she'd found in the trash that had brought her here. "One more session," he said finally. "Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Relief flooded through her. "Thank you. But that's it. After tomorrow, you're on your own." "Okay. Yes, thank you." Sloane gathered her things, headed for the door, stopped halfway and turned back. "What's your name? Your first name?" "Marcus." "Thank you, Marcus." He nodded once, said nothing. Sloane left. Marcus stood alone in the empty classroom. The building was silent now. Everyone gone. Just him and the janitor's cart and the whiteboard covered in mathematical proofs. He stared at what he'd written, at the foundations he'd built, at the simple elegance of starting from 0 and building truth brick by brick. His hands were trembling slightly. He gripped the desk to steady them. He hadn't taught like this in 10 years. Not since Naomi died. Not since he'd walked away from MIT and everything he used to be. And it felt like breathing again. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus and Sloane fell into a rhythm. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 p.m., room 207. Sloane arrived with her notebook and her questions. Marcus arrived with chalk dust on his hands and patience that seemed endless. Each session, he stripped away the complexity, took her back to 0, built the concepts brick by brick until she could see the patterns for herself. "Why does this work?" she asked one evening, staring at an equation on the board. "Because of what we built last week," Marcus said. "Remember? The foundation." She looked back through her notes, found the connection. Her eyes widened. "Oh, see it?" "Yeah, I see it." Marcus nodded. Wrote the next problem. Sloane's progress wasn't dramatic, not at first, but it was steady, real. The kind of understanding that doesn't come from memorization but from actually seeing how the pieces fit together. On the third Wednesday, she set down her pencil and looked at him. Where did you learn to teach like this? Marcus kept writing on the board. Practice. But you're really good at it. Like, really good. Better than any of my tutors. They had good credentials. That's not the same thing. Marcus capped the marker, turned to face her. What do you want me to say? I want to know who you are. The classroom went quiet. Outside, a lawnmower buzzed in the distance. Someone laughed in the parking lot. I'm the janitor, Marcus said finally. No, you're not just that. He looked at her for a long moment, deciding something. I used to be a teacher, a long time ago. Where? Doesn't matter. It does to me. Marcus picked up the eraser, started cleaning the board. We should keep working. You've got a lot to cover before your next test. Sloane wanted to push, but she could see the conversation was over, so she opened her notebook and got back to work. At home, Zara noticed the change in her father. He was lighter somehow, more present. He hummed while he cooked dinner, smiled at things she said, seemed less like he was carrying something heavy. One evening, she sat at the kitchen table working on a circuit board while Marcus made spaghetti. Yeah, baby, you seem happy. Marcus stirred the sauce. I'm always happy when I'm with you. No, I mean different happy, like something good happened. He glanced at her. What makes you say that? You've been humming. You never hum. Marcus set down the spoon, leaned against the counter. I've been helping a student after school, with math. Zara's face lit up. Like a real teacher? The question hit him harder than it should have. Like a real teacher. Marcus's mind flashed back without permission. MIT lecture hall B spring semester 10 years ago. He stood at a chalkboard 3 times the size of the one at Whitmore. Behind him, rows of graduate students sat mesmerized. He was explaining topological data analysis, showing them how to see patterns in chaos, how to find structure in noise. His hands moved across the board, confident, alive. In the front row, Naomi sat with her chin in her hand, grinning at him. She wore her favorite MIT hoodie. Her natural hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She mouthed something, show off. He smiled without pausing his explanation. After class, she met him at the board, kissed him while students filed out. You're so good at this, she said. At what? Making people see things they couldn't see before. The memory shifted. Different room, hospital white, machines beeping. Naomi in a bed, her hand in his. She was thinner, tired, but her eyes were still bright. Promise me you'll keep teaching, she whispered. Marcus's throat was too tight to speak. Promise me, Marcus. Don't let this stop you from doing what you're meant to do. I can't do it without you. Yes, you can. She squeezed his hand. You're going to be okay, and you're going to teach. Because that's who you are, he promised. 3 days later, she was gone. Dad? Zara's voice pulled him back to the present, to the kitchen, to the spaghetti sauce starting to bubble over. He grabbed the spoon, turned down the heat. Sorry, he said. What? I asked if you're teaching like a real teacher. Marcus looked at his daughter. She had Naomi's eyes, her curiosity, her fearlessness. Yeah, he said quietly, I guess I am. 2 weeks after their first session, Sloane took a practice exam. Marcus had made it himself, based on the real test she'd be facing soon. He sat at a desk in the back while she worked at the front. The room was silent except for the scratch of her pencil, the tap of her eraser, the soft sound of her breathing as she concentrated. She worked for 90 minutes, checked her answers twice, then set down her pencil. Done? She nodded. Marcus collected the paper, sat at the teacher's desk, started grading. Sloane watched him. Her hands gripped the edge of her desk. Her leg bounced with nervous energy. Marcus worked through each problem, checked her logic, her process, the way she'd built her answers from the foundation up. When he finished, he wrote a number at the top of the page, 7-8%. He held it up so she could see. Sloane stared at the number, her first passing grade in 2 years, her first real understanding of math in maybe her entire life. Her eyes filled with tears. I did it, she whispered. You did it. I actually understand it. Yeah, you do. The tears spilled over. She covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Marcus stood, walked to the front of the room, stood a respectful distance away. You okay? She nodded. Couldn't speak yet. Marcus waited. Let her have the moment. When she finally looked up, her face was red and wet, but she was smiling. Thank you, she said. You did the work, but you taught me how. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something that had been locked tight for 10 years. It wasn't fully open, but it was cracking. He smiled. It was small, just a slight upturn at the corners of his mouth. But it was real. The first genuine smile since Naomi died. Sloane saw it. Her own smile widened. "Can I take the real exam next week?" she asked. Marcus hesitated. Taking the real exam meant going public with her progress, meant questions about how she'd improved so quickly, meant risk. But she was ready. "Yeah," he said. "You're ready." Sloane packed up her things, left the classroom walking taller than she had in months, maybe years. Marcus stayed behind, cleaned the whiteboard, put away the practice test, straightened the desks. His hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, from something else, hope maybe, or purpose. Outside, the sun was setting. The parking lot was empty except for his Toyota and one other car. A black Mercedes with a vanity plate that read ASH Ford 1. Victoria had come to pick up her daughter, and she'd just watched Sloane walk out of the building from a classroom where she wasn't supposed to be. Neither Marcus nor Sloane had any idea what was about to happen. Victoria Ashford had been calling her daughter for 20 minutes. Each call went straight to voicemail. Each text went unanswered. Sloane's location was off. Her phone was off. She was supposed to be home by 6. It was 6:45. Victoria sat in her Mercedes in the Whitmore parking lot, jaw tight, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. She'd driven here on instinct. Something was wrong. Daughters didn't just disappear. Not her daughter. The building looked empty. Most of the lights were off. A janitor's cart sat near the side entrance. Victoria got out of the car. Her heels clicked across the pavement. She tried the door. Unlocked. Inside, the hallways were dim and silent. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Then she heard voices, faint, coming from upstairs. Victoria followed the sound. Second floor. Down the math wing. The voices grew clearer. A girl's voice, and a man's low calm. Room 27, the door was half open. Light spilled into the hallway. Victoria pushed the door wide. Sloane stood at the whiteboard, chalk in hand, working through an equation. She was focused, confident, writing each step with care. At a desk in the back sat the janitor, the one she'd nearly run into weeks ago, the one she'd told to stay invisible. He was watching Sloane work, his dark brown hands folded on the desk, his expression patient. They both turned when the door opened. Sloane's face went pale. "Mom?" Victoria's voice came out cold, controlled. "What is this?" "I can explain. You've been meeting with him?" Victoria's eyes moved to Marcus. He stood slowly. "Alone?" "Mom, he's been helping me with calc. Do you have any idea how this looks?" Sloane's mouth opened, closed. No words came. Victoria stepped into the room. Her designer heels struck the floor like gavels. She looked at Marcus with open disgust. "What are you trying to get from my daughter?" Marcus stayed calm. His voice was quiet. "Even. I've been helping her study. Nothing more. Nothing more." Victoria's laugh was sharp, bitter. A janitor. Alone with a teenage girl. After hours. In an empty building. "And you expect me to believe it's nothing more?" "It's not like that," Sloane said. "You don't get to speak right now." Marcus took a breath. "Mrs. Ashford, your daughter asked me for help with math. I said yes. We've been working together 3 times a week. That's all. Money. Is that what you want? A lawsuit settlement when I accuse you of?" "No." "Then what?" "Nothing." Victoria pulled out her phone. Dial. Put it on speaker. It rang twice. "Brennan." "Headmaster, this is Victoria Ashford, the 1000th at the school, room 207. You need to get here immediately." "Mrs. Ashford, I'm at dinner with my now, and bring security." She ended the call. The classroom went silent. Sloane stood frozen at the whiteboard. Marcus remained by the desk, hands at his sides, face unreadable. Victoria looked at him like he was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. "You're going to regret this. I haven't done anything wrong. You're a janitor who's been meeting secretly with a minor. In what world is that not wrong?" 15 minutes later, Headmaster Brennan arrived with a security guard. He looked tired, uncomfortable. His cardigan was buttoned wrong. "What's going on?" he asked. Victoria gestured at Marcus. "I found him alone with my daughter, in an empty classroom, after hours." Brennan looked at Sloane, then at Marcus. "Is this true?" "Yes," Marcus said. "What were you doing?" "Teaching her calculus." Victoria cut in. "He's been manipulating her, meeting with her in secret, preying on her vulnerability. I want him suspended. Tonight pending a full investigation for inappropriate contact with a student." Brennan's face went gray. "Mr. Webb, is there something you'd like to say?" Marcus looked at Sloane. She was shaking. Her hands gripped the chalk so hard her knuckles were white. "I've been tutoring her," Marcus said. She asked for help. I said yes. We've been working on foundational math, building her understanding from the ground up. Without permission from her parents, Victoria snapped. Without authorization from the school, meeting alone, in secret. Do you understand how serious this is? Brennan turned to the whiteboard. It was covered in equations, proofs, logical progressions. The work was advanced, precise, too sophisticated for high school calculus. Sloan, he said carefully, did Mr. Webb ever make you uncomfortable? No. Did he ever touch you inappropriately? No. God, no. He's been helping me learn. Victoria's voice went sharp. You don't know what manipulation looks like, Sloan. That's the point. He's been. Stop. Everyone turned. Sloan was still at the whiteboard, but something had changed. Her spine was straight. Her voice was loud, louder than anyone had ever heard it. Stop talking about him like that. Victoria blinked. Excuse me? He didn't manipulate me. He didn't prey on me. He taught me. Sloane's voice cracked but didn't break. He's the only person who's ever made me feel like I wasn't broken. Sloan, we've given you every resource. You gave me tutors who made me feel stupid. You threw money at the problem and expected it to fix me. But I'm not a problem to fix. I just needed someone to actually teach me. Sloan reached into her bag, pulled out the practice exam Marcus had graded, the one with 78% written in red at the top. She held it up. This is the first test I've passed in 2 years. Marcus didn't do the work for me. He taught me how to think, how to build understanding step by step, how to start at zero and work my way up. Victoria stared at the paper. That's real. It's real. Dr. Lin can test me right now if you don't believe it. I can do every problem on this exam. I can explain every step, because Marcus taught me. Brennan looked at the exam, at the whiteboard, at Marcus standing there in his custodian's uniform, quiet and patient as always. Mr. Webb, Brennan said slowly, where did you learn to teach like this? Marcus didn't answer. Victoria's phone was already out. I don't care where he learned it. I want him fired, immediately, or I pull every dollar I've ever given this school. Mom, you have no idea what you're defending, Sloan. This man is the best teacher I've ever had. Victoria's face went hard. She turned to Brennan. The security guard shifted uncomfortably by the door. Fire him, Victoria said. Now, or I pull every dollar I've ever given this school. The next afternoon, Headmaster Brennan's office smelled like old wood and anxiety. Marcus sat in a chair against the wall. His uniform was clean but showed every hour he'd worked that week. His dark brown hands rested on his knees, still, patient. Victoria sat across the room in a leather chair, her attorney beside her. She wore a charcoal blazer and diamond earrings. Her posture was perfect. Her expression was stone. Sloan stood near the door. Brennan had told her to leave twice. She'd refused both times. A security guard waited in the hallway, just in case. Brennan sat behind his desk, looking like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked. His cardigan had a coffee stain. Beside him sat Dr. Patricia Lin, chair of the mathematics department. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, MIT sweatshirt under a blazer. She'd been grading papers when Brennan called her an hour ago. The attorney spoke first. My client is prepared to pursue legal action unless Mr. Webb is terminated immediately. Brennan rubbed his temples. We're here to establish the facts. The facts are clear. Unauthorized contact with a minor. Unsupervised meetings. Failure to disclose his activities to parents or administration. He was helping me study, Sloan said. Victoria didn't look at her. You don't speak unless spoken to. Mrs. Ashford, Brennan said carefully, your daughter is part of this conversation. My daughter is 17 and has no idea what manipulation looks like. Dr. Lin cleared her throat. She'd been reviewing the practice exam Sloan had submitted as evidence. Her pen tapped against the paper. This is impressive work, Lin said. Victoria's attorney cut in. The results are irrelevant to the misconduct. Actually, they're quite relevant to whether harm occurred. Lin looked at Marcus. Mr. Webb, can you explain your teaching methodology? Marcus met her eyes, said nothing. He doesn't have a methodology, Victoria said. He's a janitor. Lin kept her focus on Marcus. The work on this exam shows deep conceptual understanding, not memorization, not test-taking tricks, real comprehension of foundational principles. Sloan has had 4 tutors, Victoria snapped, all from top universities. Are you suggesting a custodian is more qualified then? I'm suggesting that someone taught her to think mathematically. I'd like to understand how. Brennan leaned forward. Mr. Webb? Marcus's jaw tightened. His hands pressed harder against his knees. This was it. The moment his carefully constructed invisibility shattered. Sloane took a step forward, looked at him. Her eyes were desperate. "Please," she mouthed. Marcus stood slowly. He walked to the whiteboard at the side of the office, picked up a marker. "You start at 0, he said quietly. He wrote the number in the center of the board. Simple, clear. Then he began building, not a high school problem, not calculus, something deeper. A proof in topological data analysis. Graduate level. The kind of mathematics that most people never see. His hand moved with absolute confidence, no hesitation, no second guessing. Each symbol flowed into the next like notes in a song he'd written years ago and never forgotten. The room went quiet. Dr. Lin's pen stopped tapping. She set down the exam, stood, walked closer to the board. Marcus kept writing, building the proof layer by layer, showing the elegant structure underneath, the patterns that connected everything. Victoria's attorney opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his notes. They didn't cover this. Brennan watched, not understanding the mathematics but understanding the shift in the room, the way Dr. Lin's face had changed. Marcus finished the proof, capped the marker, stepped back. Lin approached the board. Her fingers traced the equations without touching them. Reading, recognizing. "This is..." Her voice trailed off. She turned to look at Marcus. Really look at him. At his custodian's uniform, his gray-stained hands, the quiet way he stood. "You're Marcus Webb," she said. The words hung in the air. "You wrote the Webb theorem." Marcus said nothing. Lin's hand went to her mouth. "You were at MIT. You published in Annals of Mathematics. I've cited your work." Victoria's face shifted from anger to confusion. "What are you talking about?" Lin turned to her. "This man is one of the most brilliant mathematical minds of his generation." The room went completely silent. Sloane stared at Marcus like she'd never seen him before. Brennan leaned back in his chair. "Dr. Webb?" Marcus looked at the floor. "Just Marcus." "You have a doctorate?" Brennan asked. "Had, a long time ago." Victoria stood. Her voice was sharp, controlled. "This is absurd. If he's some kind of genius, why is he cleaning toilets?" No one answered. Lin walked back to the board, studied the proof. "This is doctoral level work. This is..." She turned back to Marcus. "Why didn't you tell anyone? Wasn't relevant. Wasn't relevant." Victoria's attorney looked lost. "You concealed your credentials. You gained access to a minor under false pretenses." "I didn't lie on my application," Marcus said quietly. "They asked for a high school diploma. I have one. They asked if I could clean. I can. But you didn't disclose. They didn't ask." Sloane's voice was small. "You were a professor." Marcus looked at her. "A long time ago." "At MIT?" "Yes. And you've been..." She gestured at the whiteboard, at the proof that was so far beyond anything she'd seen. "You can do this. And you've been working as a janitor?" "Yes." "Why?" Marcus's throat worked. "Personal reasons." Victoria recovered her composure, anger sharpening into something colder. "This changes nothing. He still had unauthorized contact with my daughter. His credentials, real or fabricated, don't excuse that." Lin turned to face her. "Mrs. Ashford, with respect, this man taught your daughter mathematics. Real mathematics. The kind that actually builds understanding instead of just passing tests. Without permission. Without oversight. Meeting her in secret. Because she asked for help. She's 17. And she's been failed by every expensive tutor you've hired." Lin's voice stayed level but carried weight. "Maybe the problem wasn't your daughter's intelligence. Maybe it was that no one bothered to actually teach her." Victoria's face flushed. "How dare you? I've reviewed her work. 3 weeks ago she couldn't solve a basic derivative. Now she's demonstrating conceptual understanding of foundational calculus. That doesn't happen by accident." The attorney shuffled papers. "The question remains whether..." "The question," Lin interrupted, "is whether Mr. Webb's teaching helped or harmed this student. And the evidence clearly shows he helped her." Brennan rubbed his face. "This is unprecedented." "So is hiding a doctorate to work as a custodian," the attorney muttered. Marcus remained standing by the whiteboard, silent, waiting. Sloane stepped forward. "Can I say something?" Victoria's voice was ice. "No. I'm saying it anyway." Sloane looked at Brennan, at Lin, at everyone except her mother. "I want to take the real calculus final. Early doctored by Dr. Lin. No help, no notes. Just me and the test." "Sloane," Victoria started. If the first fail, Marcus gets fired. I won't fight it. But if I pass, you drop all of this. The room went still. You can't possibly, Victoria began. The first can, and I will. Sloane's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. You've spent 2 years telling everyone I can't learn math. Let's find out if you're right. Victoria stared at her daughter. At this girl who'd never defied her before, who'd never spoken up, who'd always been so easy to control. Fine, Victoria said finally. But when you fail, I want him gone, and I want it in writing. Brennan looked at Lynn. Can you proctor an exam tomorrow? Lynn nodded. I'll prepare one tonight. Marcus finally spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. She'll pass. Victoria turned to him. You have no idea what she's capable of. Yes, Marcus said. I do. And for the first time since the meeting started, he looked directly at Victoria Ashford. Not with anger, not with fear, just with the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly what he'd built. Someone who'd spent 3 weeks teaching a girl to start at zero and build her way up to understanding. Someone who'd kept his promise to a woman who died 7 years ago in a hospital bed, asking him to never stop teaching. The weight of that moment settled over the room like snow. Tomorrow, Sloane Ashford would take a test that would determine both their fates. And Dr. Marcus Webb finally believed she was ready. Victoria recovered first. She always did. Her face shifted from shock to calculation in seconds. The attorney beside her shuffled papers, trying to find solid ground. This changes nothing, Victoria said. Her voice was steady again. Sharp. If anything, it makes it worse. He concealed his credentials, deliberately misrepresented himself to gain access to students. Is that true? No. You have a doctorate from MIT and you're working as a custodian. You never disclosed that. You never asked. Don't play games, Mr. Webb. I'm not. Marcus's voice stayed quiet. Even. I filled out your employment application honestly. You asked for a high school diploma. I have one. You asked if I had experience with building maintenance. I do. You asked if I could pass a background check. I did. But you didn't mention that I used to be a professor? No, because it wasn't relevant to cleaning floors. Victoria's attorney leaned forward. A reasonable employer would expect. I didn't lie, Marcus said. I just didn't tell you everything. Brennan rubbed his face. His coffee-stained cardigan looked worse under the fluorescent lights. Why? Why work here at all? If you're this brilliant mathematician, why are you mopping hallways? The room went quiet. Marcus looked down at his hands, at the gray stains that wouldn't wash out, at the calluses from years of pushing mops and carrying trash. My wife died, he said finally. 7 years ago, heart condition. We didn't know she had it until it was too late. Lynn's expression softened. She was an engineer, brilliant. We used to solve problems together. When she died, I couldn't. Marcus's voice caught. He cleared his throat. I couldn't stand in front of a classroom anymore. Couldn't write equations without seeing her. So I left, came here. Found work that let me be home for my daughter every night. But why hide it? Brennan asked. I wasn't hiding. I was surviving. Victoria stood abruptly. This is all very touching, but it doesn't change the fact that he had unauthorized contact with my daughter. His sob story doesn't excuse. I have a proposal, Sloane said. Everyone turned. She stood straighter than she had all meeting. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. Let me take the real exam, the actual calculus final. Tomorrow morning. Proctored by Dr. Lynn. No notes, no help. Just me. Victoria stared at her. Absolutely not. If I fail, Marcus is fired. I won't fight it. But if I pass, you drop all of this. Sloane, you can't possibly. Yes, I can. Her voice was steady, clear. You spent 2 years telling everyone I'm too stupid to learn math. Let's find out if you're right. Victoria's jaw clenched. You're not ready. How would you know? You haven't asked me a single question about what I've learned. Because he manipulated you into, he taught me to think, that's all. And if you're so sure I haven't learned anything, you should have no problem letting me prove it. Dr. Lynn spoke up. I can prepare an exam tonight. Same difficulty as the standard final. I'll proctor it myself, no one else in the room. Brennan looked between Sloane and Victoria. Mrs. Ashford? Victoria's hands gripped her purse. Her knuckles went white. She was trapped. If she said no, she admitted she thought Sloane might actually pass. If she said yes, she risked losing control of the narrative. Fine, Victoria said through her teeth. But when she fails, I want him gone, and I want it in writing. Brennan nodded slowly. If she fails, we'll discuss Mr. Stester, Webb's future employment. There's nothing to discuss. He's fired. We'll see. Victoria's expression went cold. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. And when this is over, headmaster, we're going to have a very different conversation about your future here. She grabbed her purse and left. The attorney scrambled to follow. The door slammed. No one moved for a long moment. Then Sloane turned to Marcus. I can do this, right? Yes. You're sure? You're ready. She nodded. Took a shaky breath. Okay. Dr. Lin touched her shoulder gently. Get a good night's sleep. I'll see you at 8. Sloane left. Brennan looked at Marcus. Tired, worn. For what it's worth, I hope she passes. She will. How can you be so sure? Because I taught her to start at 0. Everything else built from there. Marcus walked out of the office, down the empty hallway, past the classrooms where he mopped 1,000 floors. He clocked out, drove home through the West End as the sun set behind him. When he walked through the door, Zara was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. Her circuit board sat untouched. Her mismatched socks tapped against the chair leg. Dad? Marcus set down his keys. Hey baby, is it true? Is what true? Mira's mom is a teacher at Whitmore. She said everyone's talking about you. She said you used to be a famous professor. Marcus sat down across from her. The kitchen was warm, the lamplight soft. The same table where they'd done homework together for 6 years. Yeah, he said quietly. I was. At MIT? Yes. And you wrote important math stuff? I did. Zara's eyes were wide, confused. Then why are you a janitor? Marcus reached across the table, took her small brown hand in his stained one. Because when your mom died, I fell apart. I couldn't do the work anymore, couldn't be that person anymore, so I found something else, something simple that let me be home with you every night. You gave up being a professor for me. I didn't give up anything. I chose you. There's a difference. Zara's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. Why didn't you tell me? Because it didn't matter. Being a professor doesn't make me your dad. Being here does. She got up, came around the table, wrapped her arms around him. Marcus held his daughter close, felt her shake against his chest. Mom would be proud of you, she whispered, his throat closed. He couldn't speak, just held her tighter. They stayed like that for a long time. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about tomorrow, about Sloane sitting alone in Dr. Lin's office with a test that would determine both their fates. He believed she was ready, but belief didn't stop the worry. The next morning, Marcus didn't go to Whitmore. He stayed home, made breakfast, helped Zara with her weekend homework. Tried not to check his phone every 5 minutes. At 8 a.m., Sloane walked into Dr. Lin's office. The room was quiet. Just a desk, a chair, and a sealed envelope containing the exam. Dr. Lin set a timer. 2 hours, no breaks, no questions once you start. Sloane sat down. Her hands were steady. You can do this, Lin said quietly. I know. Lin opened the envelope. Set the pages in front of her. Sloane picked up her pencil. Started at 0. 2 hours later, she set down her pencil. Dr. Lin collected the pages. Looked at the work. Her face gave nothing away. I'll have results by end of day, she said. Sloane stood. Walked out of the office, down the empty hallway. She pulled out her phone, texted Marcus. I finished. Don't know if I passed, but I understood every question. Marcus read the message in his kitchen, Zara looking over his shoulder. He typed back, that's all that matters. But they both knew it wasn't. By end of day, Dr. Lin would grade that exam, and everything would change. 2 days later, Dr. Lin walked into Headmaster Brennan's office carrying the folder. Marcus sat in the same chair he'd sat in during the confrontation. Same stained uniform, same gray hands resting on his knees, but something in his posture had shifted. He sat straighter, quieter. Sloane sat beside him. Victoria stood near the window, arms crossed, looking out at the campus she'd funded. Brennan looked tired. He'd barely slept since this started. Doctor. Lin set the folder on the desk, opened it, pulled out Sloane's exam. At the top, in red ink, 94%. Brennan leaned forward, studied the number, looked at Sloane. This is legitimate? Completely, Lin said. I proctored the entire exam, no notes, no assistance. She worked every problem herself. And more than that, Lin flipped through the pages. Her work shows genuine understanding, not memorization. She can explain why each step follows from the last. She's built real comprehension. Sloane's hands were shaking in her lap. 94%, Brennan said softly. Victoria turned from the window. Her face was unreadable. I want to see the exam. Lynn handed it over. Victoria read through it. Page by page, her jaw tightened. Her fingers gripped the paper hard enough to wrinkle the edges. "This doesn't prove anything," she said finally. Doctor kinked. Lynn could have given her easier questions, or graded generously. "Mrs. Ashford," Lynn said evenly, "this exam was identical in difficulty to the standard final, and I graded it against the same rubric I use for all my students. Your daughter earned this score. I want a second opinion. You can have 10 opinions. The work speaks for itself." Brennan cleared his throat. "Based on these results, I'm clearing Mr. Webb of all accusations. Sloane's progress demonstrates that his teaching was legitimate and beneficial." Victoria's voice went cold. "Then you've made your choice, headmaster. Mrs. Ashford, I'm pulling every dollar I've ever donated to this school, effective immediately, and I'm speaking with my attorney about pursuing legal action against both you and Mr. Webb for allowing this situation to develop." She set the exam on the desk, walked to the door, stopped, looked back at Sloane. "You're coming with me." Sloane didn't move. "No." "Excuse me?" "I'm not going with you. Not right now." Victoria's face flushed. "We'll discuss this at home." She left. The door didn't slam. It closed with careful, controlled precision. Somehow that was worse. The office went quiet. Sloane let out a breath she'd been holding for 2 days. Her whole body sagged. "You did it," Marcus said quietly. "We did it." "No, you did the work." Brennan leaned back in his chair, rubbed his face. "This is going to get messy. Victoria will follow through on her threats. She'll pull her funding. She'll talk to the press." "Let her," Lynn said. "Sloane's exam results are a matter of record. The truth is on our side." And that's exactly what happened. Victoria leaked a story to the Charlotte Observer, framing herself as a concerned mother victimized by a predatory employee. She painted Marcus as someone who'd manipulated her vulnerable daughter. She positioned herself as fighting for accountability, but a local education journalist named Sarah Chen decided to dig deeper. She interviewed Sloane. On the record, Sloane told her everything, about failing for 2 years, about the 4 expensive tutors who couldn't help, about finding Marcus's proof in the trash, about learning to start at zero. She showed Chen her exam, her practice tests, the notebook full of her own work. Chen published the real story 3 days later. The headline read, "Genius mathematician working as janitor saves billionaire's daughter for free." The article went viral. Reddit picked it up. Twitter exploded. Within 48 hours, the mathematics community had rallied around Marcus. Professors who'd worked with him at MIT wrote op-eds. Former students shared stories. The American Mathematical Society released a statement praising his dedication to education. MIT reached out, offered him a position, full professorship, research funding. Everything he'd walked away from 7 years ago. Marcus said no, he wasn't ready for that world. Maybe he never would be. But Charlotte Community College made an offer too. Part-time position teaching remedial math, evening classes for working adults and at-risk students. The pay was modest. The hours were flexible. The work was meaningful. Marcus said yes. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a small classroom at the community college. The room smelled like old textbooks and floor cleaner. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The desks were scratched and worn. Nothing like the gleaming halls of MIT, nothing like the marble corridors of Whitmore. But it was perfect. 20 students sat in front of him. Some were in their 20s, some in their 50s. Some were parents who'd never finished school. Some were immigrants learning English alongside algebra. Some had been told their whole lives they were bad at math. They all looked at Marcus with the same expression Sloane had worn that first evening. Desperate, uncertain, hoping he could help. Marcus picked up a marker, walked to the whiteboard. He wrote a single number in the center. 0, we start here, he said. His voice was quiet but clear. Not with what you don't know, with what's true. In the back row, Zara sat doing her homework. She was 13 now. Her hair was still in 2 puffs. Her socks still didn't match. She looked up when her father started teaching, grinned. 2 rows ahead, Sloane volunteered as a peer tutor on weekends. She was enrolled at UNC Chapel Hill now, studying mathematics education. She wanted to teach the way Marcus had taught her. She wanted to help people start at 0. On Marcus's desk sat a framed photo. Naomi in her MIT hoodie, smiling, making that goofy face she used to make when she was proud of him. Marcus turned back to his students, began building the first concept, brick by brick, pattern by pattern, foundation by foundation. A woman in the front row raised her hand. "Is it okay if I don't understand this right away?" "Yes," Marcus said. "Understanding takes time. We're not racing. We're building." I've failed math 3 times, she said quietly. I'm scared I'm just too stupid for this. Marcus set down his marker, looked at her, saw Sloane, saw Zara, saw every student who'd ever been told they weren't enough. You're not stupid, he said. You just haven't been taught how to think yet. That's what we're going to do here. He turned back to the board, kept writing, kept teaching. Outside, Charlotte glowed in the evening light. The West End settled into familiar sounds. Families making dinner, kids playing in yards, life moving forward. Inside, Marcus taught not for recognition, not for tenure, not for publications or prizes. He taught because a girl once asked him for help, and he couldn't walk away. He taught because his wife had made him promise to never stop. He taught because his daughter was watching, learning what it means to use your gifts to help others. He taught because these 20 people in front of him deserved someone who believed they could learn. And he taught because he'd finally learned the truth himself. Greatness isn't about where you work or what title you hold or how much money you make. Greatness is about meeting people where they are, believing in them when no one else will, and showing them that every impossible journey, every dream, every goal, every transformation begins the same way, at zero.